The House on Black Hollow Road. Everyone in the small town of Willow Creek knew to avoid the house on Black Hollow Road. The townsfolk whispered that it was cursed, that those who dared step inside were never the same. Even on the brightest days, a shadow seemed to loom over it, and at night, the house exuded an eerie glow. It all started years ago, when the Mathers family lived there. They were quiet folks, kept to themselves, never caused any trouble. But one cold autumn night, the whole family vanished. No trace, no bodies, just a half-eaten dinner still on the table, the lights still on, and the front door wide open. Rumor had it that the last thing anyone heard from them was the mother's voice screaming for help, but by the time neighbors arrived, only silence remained. The house was left abandoned, but strange occurrences started almost immediately. Passersby reported seeing faces in the windows, hearing muffled cries in the middle of the night. Some claimed that when the wind was just right, you could hear faint footsteps echoing down the road, as if someone were pacing back and forth inside. But no one dared go near it, at least not until Mara and Tom decided to move in. Mara and Tom had heard the stories, but they were young and in love, scoffing at the superstitions of the town. To them, the house was an affordable fixer-upper with character. They moved in on a bright Saturday morning, laughing as they unpacked, ignoring the ominous creaks and moans from the ancient floorboards. The first night was quiet, but Mara couldn't shake a feeling of being watched. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist in unnatural ways, and she heard whispers that she dismissed as the wind. She shrugged it off, blaming it on the stress of moving, but the sense of unease only grew. On the second night, things took a darker turn. They were woken by the sound of footsteps echoing down the hallway, slow and deliberate. Tom got up, holding a flashlight, but found nothing. As they lay back down, they heard the footsteps again, this time closer. And then came the whispering, cold, incomprehensible words that filled the room, freezing the air. In the days that followed, the house seemed to come alive. Objects moved on their own, doors slammed shut, and the lights flickered constantly. Mara became withdrawn, spending hours staring at the walls, muttering that she could hear voices. She claimed the house was speaking to her, telling her things, terrible things. Tom tried to reason with her, but he could see the fear in her eyes. One night, Tom awoke to find Mara gone. Panicked, he searched the house, calling her name, but only silence replied. He eventually found her in the basement, standing in front of a wall covered in strange symbols. She was scratching something into the wall, muttering in a language he didn't recognize. Her hands were bleeding, her eyes wide with terror, but she didn't stop. When he finally pulled her away, she looked at him and whispered, "They're coming." That was the last night Mara was herself. After that, she became a hollow shell, her eyes vacant, her movements slow and robotic. She would sit in the dark for hours, her lips moving as if speaking to someone unseen. Sometimes Tom caught glimpses of shadows that seemed to hover around her, and once he saw a face staring back at him from the mirror, an emaciated, twisted version of Mara, grinning with hollow eyes. Tom became desperate. He tried to leave, but every time he stepped outside, a strange force pulled him back. It was as if the house itself wouldn't let him go. The whispers grew louder, filling every corner of his mind until he could barely think. On the final night, Tom found himself standing in the basement, a knife in his hand, Mara's vacant eyes staring back at him. The house was alive, pulsing with a dark energy, the walls seeming to breathe. And then he heard it. A voice, smooth and cold, telling him to do it, to end it all. As he raised the knife, the lights flickered one last time. He saw Mara's face, a single tear rolling down her cheek, her eyes pleading with him. In that brief moment of clarity, he dropped the knife and ran. He ran through the halls, through the front door, into the night, leaving Mara and the house behind. When the townsfolk found him the next morning, he was wandering the streets, his mind shattered, repeating the same words over and over. "The house, it's alive, it's hungry." No one dared go near the house on Black Hollow Road after that, and on certain nights, if you walk by, you can still see a figure standing in the window, waiting, watching, and the faint sound of footsteps echoing in the dark.